The ocean has always been a witness. Long before books were written, before kingdoms rose and fell, it carried whispers of those who dared to cross its cold expanse. But the question has haunted scholars for centuries. Who were the first to step onto the Americas? And from where did their journey begin? For generations, the story seemed settled. It was said that bands of hunters, hardened by Siberian winters, walked across a land bridge of ice and stone some 13,000 years ago. They carried their tools, their stories, and became the ancestors of the Clovis people. Yet, like the tide erasing footprints in the sand, new discoveries swept that story aside. Ancient tracks pressed into mud, strange stone blades unlike any in Siberia, and most shocking of all, DNA, carrying the faint echo of mothers long gone. These fragments tell a tale not of one path, but of many, and of origins stretching further east across the restless waters of the Pacific. Imagine a single cell. Inside it, the command center, the nucleus, holds nearly all of life's instructions. But scattered in tiny engines called mitochondria lies another script, shorter, more fragile, yet endless scientists turn to this genetic relic in search of answers. And within its spiral code, they uncovered an unexpected signature, a rare lineage known as D4H. Today, you might find it in barely 1 out of every 200 people across the globe. But in the deep past, its story spanned continents. Some branches, like D4H1 and D4H2, WOV D4H3b, endured in villages of China and Thailand. And yet another, its sister, D4H3a, leapt oceans, becoming rooted in the very first peoples of the Americas. It was a puzzle that demanded scale. To trace the journey, researchers sifted through more than 100,000 modern DNA samples from across Eurasia and the Americas, and 15,000 ancient ones drawn from bones, teeth, and hair. The results pointed not to Siberia, but to the northern coast of China, lands of estuaries, rivers, and rocky shores. There, between today's Beijing and Liaoning, a lineage stirred. Somewhere along the Yellow Sea, mothers carried this hidden code in their blood. Some stayed, becoming the ancestors of villagers who still farmed those coasts. But others, restless, perhaps driven by hunger or hope, began to move. To picture their migration, the scientists built a kind of family tree, a phylogeny. At the root, D4H, the common ancestor. From it spread branches like veins in a leaf, D4H1, strong in northern and central China, stretching even to Japan. D4H2, shared by the Ainu and Siberian peoples. D4H4, spread across the highlands of northwest and southwest China. And then there was D4H3, the branch of wanderers. Within it, two twigs diverged, D4H3a, the American founder lineage, and D4H3b, still rooted in Asia. One skeleton, uncovered in the Amur River Valley and dated to 14,000 years ago, held the telltale code of D4H3a. Just 6 tiny mutations separated this person from the earliest Native American lineages. A missing cousin, a bridge between two worlds. But when did these journeys begin? The answer lies in the climate of the Ice Age. Around 22,000 years ago, the Earth reached its coldest point. Glaciers smothered continents, seas withdrew, and the air itself seemed brittle. It was a time of desperation, but also of movement. Families with the D4H3a signature began pushing outward, seeking coastlines where food might be found. Here lies the twist. The famed Bering Land Bridge, long thought to be the sole highway, was often sealed by titanic ice sheets. If the bridge was blocked, how could these travelers cross? The sea itself provided the answer. Along the Pacific Rim stretched the Kelp Highway, a ribbon of ocean brimming with forests of seaweed, fish, shellfish, and sea mammals. These were not roads of stone, but living, breathing pathways. And so, small groups may have lashed together boats or rafts, hugging the coastlines, skirting glaciers, and finding refuge on scattered islands. This was no mass migration, but a mosaic of voyages, courageous families steering toward an unseen shore. Each landing was a gamble. Behind them lay hunger. Before them only the roar of waves and the salt bite of the wind. Yet some made it. Their footprints would one day be pressed into the soils of Idaho, Chile, and the Arctic. Their DNA would whisper in the blood of Inuit hunters and Mapuche herders alike. As the world slowly warmed, the ice that had imprisoned continents began to retreat. Between 19,000 and 11,500 years ago, glaciers melted, rivers surged, and seas crept higher, swallowing coastlines that once joined lands. This was the time of the second great radiation of the D4H lineages. As opportunities opened, populations expanded, competition for game and plants intensified, and migration again reshaped the map of humanity. New branches bloomed. D4H4 in the mountains of southwest China, D4H1C stretching across valleys, and D4H1A spreading into the islands of Japan. These were not just genetic markers, they were families, communities, and cultures carried on the backs of women who gave birth in caves, under trees, and by riverbanks. The rising seas eventually drowned the land bridges that once tethered China to Japan, but before the waters swallowed them, they became paths of migration. People, tools, and stories crossed with ease, leaving genetic fingerprints still visible in the Ainu and Jomon peoples of Japan. While mitochondrial DNA told the tale of mothers, another record, the Y chromosome, preserved the legacy of fathers. Passed from father to son like a surname, it too carried hidden maps. In northern coastal China, scientists found a lineage C2AL1373, shadowing the same paths as the maternal D4H3A line. From 458,000 Y chromosomes studied, the pattern was unmistakable. Fathers, too, had joined this exodus. Two ancient skeletons unearthed from the Songhua Plain in China, dating to 14,000 years ago, revealed the double signature D4H 3 mitochondrial DNA and C2-1373Y chromosomes, a pairing later mirrored in Native American lineages. Mothers and fathers had set out together, entire families threading their way across the edge of the Pacific into a land unknown. Genes are silent witnesses, but stone speaks too. Across the icy corridors of northern China, in the islands of Japan, and deep into the Americas, a shared tradition left its mark. Stemmed projectile points, stone tips with distinctive notched bases, crafted for arrows and spears. At Cooper's Ferry in Idaho, a site more than 16,000 years old, such tools lay buried beside campfires and bones. Thousands of miles away, in the Jomon layers of Japan, nearly identical artifacts appeared around 15,500 years ago. These were not accidents of chance. They were the fingerprints of culture, carried from hand to hand, teacher to student, across oceans and continents. More than technology, they were memory itself, reminders of a world once shared. The bold theory of the kelp highway gained strength from these echoes. Imagine it, a coastline stretching unbroken from Asia to the Americas, rich in seaweed forests, teeming with fish, shellfish, seals, and seabirds. For people adept at harvesting the ocean, this highway was not an obstacle, but a lifeline. Families may have paddled skin boats along the surf, pulled kelp into fires for food, and used shells for tools. And though no traces of these early boats remain, the wood and hide long since claimed by the sea, the DNA, the tools, and the footprints all testify that such journeys were not only possible, but real. Today, the descendants of those voyagers still walk the earth. From the Inuit who hunt seals on Arctic ice to the Mapuche farmers in Chile's southern valleys, the D4H3A lineage hums quietly in their cells. In Japan, the Ainu and the ancient Jomon preserve D4H1A and D4H2. Threads tying them back to the same northern Chinese shores. Across the Pacific, these peoples, separated by oceans and centuries, are united by an invisible web of ancestry. For centuries, the story of the first Americans was told as a single, narrow march across a frozen land bridge. But the truth, revealed by fragments of bone, strands of DNA, and chipped stone, is far richer. Northern coastal China emerges as one of the great cradles of migration, its people venturing outward by land and sea. They left their mark not only in the genes of Native Americans and the Ainu, but also in the rhythms of human courage and ingenuity. The ocean remembers them. It remembers the paddle strokes of families who rode into mist, the cries of children lulled by waves, the faith of mothers who bore new lives in new lands. It remembers the spark of firelight on rocky beaches, the clash of stone striking stone as tools were shaped. And though much remains hidden beneath glaciers, forests, and rising seas, each new discovery, each fragment of DNA, each ancient tool brings us closer to hearing their full story. We are, all of us, children of forgotten tides,